Hello and welcome. My name is Emily Prieto, and I'm the co-host of the Seeds of Tao podcast alongside my husband, Joshua Prieto. We're also the co-owners of the Seeds of Tao education platform and incubator for regenerative entrepreneurs. If you're new to the podcast, this is a podcast for impact entrepreneurs creating regenerative enterprises. We often get asked what exactly a regenerative enterprise or impact entrepreneur is. So if you're wondering, a regenerative enterprise builds triple bottom line profits through the practice of ethics and principles that lead to a more inclusive, fair, and balanced economy. Impact entrepreneurs, or regenpreneurs, as we sometimes like to call them, are those willing and able to take on the financial and personal risks of starting and building regenerative enterprises. You'll get to know exactly what all that means as you join us for this and future episodes, but know that we welcome everyone to join us as we work to build regenerative economies together. That's exactly why we are here doing what we do at Seeds of Tao. Our mission is to help establish regenerative economies in every bioregion by serving individual regenpreneurs like yourself. In this podcast, you'll hear the startup stories in all their glory from impact entrepreneurs all over the globe. You'll learn and grow the skills of building a regenerative enterprise from your peers, mentors, and leaders. Finally, we'll get to know each other as you engage in the podcast and join the wonderful Regenerative Business Economies Network, aka RegenBen, an open community where peers, colleagues, funders, allies, and supporters of regenpreneurs come together to build and the regenerative economies of the future. Join us every month for a wonderful episode as we collectively move beyond sustainability and into our regenerative future. It all starts now. Welcome to the Seeds of Tao podcast. Today it is Josh and Emily time.
Yeah.
Say hi, Josh.
I'm here.
Today we're going to be talking about something super close to our hearts. We are talking about identifying the ideal client of your regenerative enterprise and why that is so important.
Yeah. So we do these episodes every now and then to help us to get a better understanding, help you get a better understanding of how to build greater impact in your business, create the regenerative enterprise that you want. It's going to require understanding, greater knowledge of different things like branding and marketing and personal development of yourself and all those really big core competency pieces that help us as entrepreneurs build towards that regenerative enterprise. So today we're going to be talking about your ideal client. How are you serving them? How are you getting in front of them? And yeah, so we want to serve you. And so we're going to talk, a lot of this conversation is also going to be about service, how we're serving others in the regenerative enterprise that we have.
So, I mean, every business, if you think of a business, it can be for or not for profit. It doesn't really matter in this context, but they're in the business to serve someone, right? Hopefully their product or service or whatever is creating an impact. It's filling a need, right? But as regenerative enterprises or regenerative entrepreneurs of regenerative enterprises, who is it that we are serving?
Yeah. And we as regenerative enterprises, it is a little different than the normal business, but we really hold true to those core ethics. And we often talk about permaculture on this podcast and applying it to our businesses. Well, those three core ethics in permaculture of people, planet, or earth care, people care, and fair share, or I like to call the last one future care for our future generations, right? We really understand that's a big part of our service, right? And we're serving people. We're not only serving people, we're serving planet, because that's typically what we try to do in business is we try to serve others, right? Sometimes we don't do the best job in that in our current system, but we're usually serving people. A lot of times we neglect planet in that service of the normal enterprises, and we often neglect future generations, right? And so we know as regenerative enterprise builders that is who we're serving. It's not just the people, it's the planet and future generations. And so we want to be able to incorporate that into our enterprise and how we think about how our service within our enterprise.
I think it's also kind of interesting to note that we could kind of wrap profit in with future care, because if you are not producing a yield, if you are not making a profit, the business can't keep going to continue to serve or to amplify its service. Profit doesn't have to be this negative, evil thing. Like, it really genuinely helps you to keep serving the way that you want to serve. So if you want to look at that as like a triple bottom line or even a quadruple bottom line, people planet future profit, I don't know, however you want to take that, I think it's just important to note.
Yeah, definitely. And it's, we really can't neglect the getting an economical profit from this equation of how we're serving, because if we can't generate that type of profit, we're doing it a disservice, right? We have to actually fit into the current economic system and build towards lifting all parts of the systems that are currently at play, right? And yes, there probably will be a time where we can transition away from the more economic profit-driven systems, but in reality, it's probably going to look more. The transition is probably going to look more as a evolution of what that economic model looks like, not a complete disregard of all systems that are currently at play, right? So I know we always kind of get into this conversation on this podcast about the building towards and transitioning towards a new type of economy, but we're also wanting to kind of focus in and start talking about how the people that we're serving are going to lead towards that economy that we're looking towards. So the people we serve, often they are the ones that are the changing factor here. We know we have to serve planet. We know we have to serve the future generations, but as an enterprise, the thing that kind of evolves and we get greater clarity on are the individuals that we can serve through the services and products that we create, that then lead to us being able to help the planet and future generations, right? So let's talk about that. We're going to ask some questions, and we're going to have a conversation, Emily and I, about this and really explore this before we dive into some more really tangible kind of how-tos of how we can gain greater clarity of identifying our ideal client and then being able to use that and apply that into our business.
Yeah, so I think it's important that we kind of start with a couple of rhetorical questions, just to get, so we can all get in the mindset or raise our consciousness a little bit by reflecting on what we're currently doing, right? Mm-hmm. Because finding the gaps in where we're at and where we want to be can help us to look for solutions that are really going to help us move forward. So one question, just think about this. If you want to write it down, you're welcome to. Are you currently serving who you want to?
Yeah. And as you reflect on that, so are we currently serving the person or people or groups of people that we really truly want to? Think about those past clients. You may be, out in the garden or out in the farm right now, doing your work. You may be sitting at your desk. You may be listening to this in the car during some transit. But think of that. Who are you currently serving? And are they your ideal client? I often look at this and I think of past clients that I've worked with, mm-hmm. and I go through my head, and sometimes the first thing that comes to my head is all the really bad ones, right? The ones that really just didn't work out, or I'm currently working with, and I'm frustrated with the amount of time that I've spent in really wasteful situations, or the client that's taken advantage of me, or I gravitate to that. Maybe it's just my pessimistic side of me. I don't know, but we can often easily recall those times and not want to repeat those, right? But then, as I'm thinking of that, I also think of the times where I've really enjoyed working with a client, right? Where I felt like I was doing my purpose, fulfilling my purpose, right? And I want you to linger there as well, because we got to know both sides. We got to know what didn't really work and what doesn't work for us. And we got to know what really just gets us lit up and we get excited to do the work for this type of people. And that is essentially our ideal client, right? Think of that. And then let's also start to explore some of these other questions here. If you answered yes, I have the ideal client that I want right now, or
I'm currently serving them.
I'm currently serving them. I feel like I can get the clients that I like. How well do you know that person? Right? Could you say that person is understood, or could that person on the flip side, if you were talking to them and you were asking them, do you feel like I have a good understanding of you, like where you're at, what you're doing? How would they answer? And think about that for a moment.
There was a little time that came to mind recently when I was doing office hours with some of our StorySeed clients. Mm-hmm. Before they were kind of diving in there, a lot of them are in this realm right now, figuring out their ideal client, and we were working on kind of like filling out like a hypothetical avatar, right? Mm-hmm. But then all the things that they wrote down, we really had to go back and look at how much evidence do you really have that situation, that's really their situation, or how much are you inferring? Mm-hmm. So think about that too, because a lot of times our brain will fill in the gaps of what we think is happening. But if we look at, well, why do I believe that about them? Is it because I'm filling in the gap, or is it because I've seen that behavior, mm-hmm. right? How much do I know that for sure? So just be aware of that, because that's really important, because we really will, especially, I mean, these are people. And when we meet someone, we fill in the gaps all over the place.
Yeah.
And
we make judgments.
So being asked, how well do you know them? What like pieces of evidence do you have that tell you that, yeah, I know them in this because I've seen them do A, B, and C? Mm-hmm. Just to think about.
Yeah. Yeah. And you could use really analytical understandings, but that sometimes only gets you so far to really understanding the human nature and the human behavior of people and the kind of the psychology of things, right? Like, and being able to get to a point where you can have empathy of that mm-hmm. of your ideal client and really truly understand them for who they are and what they're about.
Yeah,
right?
really putting yourself in their shoes, feeling like you really get them.
Now, if you are that person right now that's listening to this, and we've all been there in our businesses, because it's about finding the product market fit and really truly trying to understand our client takes time, it takes effort, and sometimes it takes years and years for us to get that product market fit. Doesn't mean that you're not making sales and making some type of market fit, but it might take you a moment to get that groove and truly understand. So you might think of yourself right now, and you might be thinking, my enterprise, and the clients that we're getting in the business, I don't get the right clients that I could say that I truly want.
Yeah,
right?
Or maybe I'm bringing in this other group that I'm totally not meaning to. We mm-hmm. had that conversation with a client recently. Mm-hmm. She was accidentally bringing in kind of extremists, mm-hmm. but that's not what she was trying to do. That's not who she was trying to help. But that group kind of kept showing up.
Right, and it's often a common thing in regeneration, because we're an edge culture and we're trying to bring that into more of a mainstream, that we can get a certain type of client that might be out of our bounds, or not serving the type of people that we want. If we want to make this more mainstream, we want more people eating better food and more and used and replenishing soils in their neighborhoods and so forth. We got to understand that we might be serving people that aren't within the culture that we are have currently existed in for some time in permaculture and regeneration and so forth, because we've been edge culture, right? So that being said, or on the fringes of things and not necessarily mainstream, is what I'm trying to get at with edge culture. If you've never heard that term, And it's something that we kind of use a lot. So if you said no to that question of like, I don't really have people that I feel like I can serve, that I want to serve, how do you find those people? How do you find those people, and how do you get greater clarity on who those people are?
Yeah. How can you serve those that you're actually wanting to help?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So now that we've kind of answered those or asked those questions for you to think about, let's dive into one of the kind of big common problems. And that's that it's a misunderstanding of the people that we serve. That's where we get a lot of this like disconnection, where things just don't fit together and make sense, and we're not as effective as we're wanting to be. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. There's a couple ways that this can show up, this misunderstanding. We might think that someone is a good fit, but really they're not. We might think that they're a bad fit, but really they're a good fit. We can judge them thinking they're kind of the enemy, but really they're the friend. And sometimes we honestly just don't know enough about those we serve, which creates misunderstandings. So what can that lead to?
Yeah. And Emily, you talked about we fill in the gaps a lot of times, right? Yeah. And we make those judgments, and a lot of times the mind, we need those judgments, really. If we don't have all the information, we have to base it off of something that we can.
Of course.
Right. But the gradual understanding is that the better that you get to know who you serve, the better empathy you have, the better way that you can learn to fulfill their needs, understand their desires, understand the challenges, and solve for them, right? And so if you are filling in the gaps, there's a thing between, there's a fine line between filling in the gaps and actually reading in between the lines, right? Where you get to know people well enough that you're being able to see the kind of emotional cues and different things that they may be saying something. They may not be able to give you all the answers in a really good concise way, right? The person that your ideal client isn't going to say everything about themselves, right?
Right.
You're going to have to read in between the lines a little bit, get to understand why they're saying these types of things. Do you really truly get to know them?
It's a balance.
There is a balance, right?
We don't want to over infer, but we also do want to really put ourselves in their shoes and build out their story from what we do already know.
So that problem of having this misunderstanding and really truly trying to build towards a greater understanding, it's a people problem, right? And in permaculture and in regeneration, we often think that the big problem is solving for the climate crisis or whatever. But in order to be able to create that impact, create that change, we have to truly figure out the people problem first and solve this, right? Really get to understand people, really understand and express empathy. And so there's that skill, and it's really like that social permaculture skill that we're trying to work on here, where we get to know the things about our clients.
Mm-hmm. But there's a couple different ways that this kind of misunderstanding can show up in our business. That might look like clients that we don't want to work with. I'm sure we've all had those. It might be difficulties getting the clients you do want to work with. Maybe you're bringing in a thing I often see with this is maybe you're bringing in clients that aren't able to afford your services, right? Which is, there's a misunderstanding there for what you're offering and the type of people you're bringing in. You may also be creating the wrong solutions for the wrong people. That can come from misunderstanding. And also not being able to serve the people, the planet, or the future in the way that we're really, truly desiring to.
Yeah, so we get into these moments of misunderstanding or judging our client in a certain way, and it can lead to greater impacts on our business and really limit us in creating that regenerative enterprise that we're building. How do we get beyond those? How do we move towards that? So now let's start talking about.
Yeah, we brought up the problems and kind of the symptoms of what's happening.
And really, truly, hopefully you've at this point been thinking about your ideal client or who you would like to be your ideal client. And now let's figure out some ways that we can better understand them or better understand who they are.
Yeah, things that you can do in your business to get more targeted and more effective. And let's just remember, disclaimer, lots of businesses will do this in an effort to manipulate those people. That's obviously not what we're pushing for here at all. No. As a regenerative enterprise, working with people building regenerative enterprises, it's not from a place of manipulation. It's genuinely from a place of being able to amplify everyone's positive impact here. Mm-hmm. And to increase our positive impact, we need to be able to get clients. We need to be able to build a business, for profit, not for profit, again, doesn't matter. We need to be effectively communicating with the right people in order to create that positive impact amplification.
Yeah. So
it's just important to throw that out there.
Yeah. So to do that, let's not pull from, tactics and techniques and of how to do marketing and market research for our ideal client, but let's start to build from the principles and recognize the patterns that exist over time within human connection and empathy that will help us to truly find out who our ideal client is and how we can reach them, how we can deeply understand them better than really they understand themselves, at least to the point where we understand what they desire and the challenges that they're having in order to get what they desire in regards to the product or service that we're bringing to them that helps them to build a better life for themselves and build up people, planet, and future, right? Mm-hmm. So the two ethics that I kind of want to pull out here are
the principles.
The principles are from the permaculture principles, right? And well, let's talk about those and kind of how they interact with our business, especially when it comes to our ideal client. And the first is observing and interacting. We talk about this a lot, especially when it comes to our market research within business. This is an ethic that we use in our business in so many different ways. But when it comes to our ideal client and truly understanding them, there are three things that I want to kind of bring up here and kind of really strong how-tos or ways that we can observe and interact with our ideal client. And that is first, just getting out there and starting conversations, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people think that you have to get, the market research from, Gallup surveys or, industry surveys and those types of things and then apply those or get an understanding of, and that type of information is helpful for your business. But when it comes down to it, it's really about having the right type of interactions, the right type of communication, so that that you're talking to people, right? That you're actually building towards true connection and true empathy of the people that you're serving.
You're going to understand them so much more when you're in a conversation with someone, mm-hmm. so you can really level with them. Mm-hmm. And understand their challenge, understand what they're looking for, understand where they're at in their life and in their work.
And frankly, there's really no short way around this, right? Mm-hmm. I've never seen a business, and when it comes to getting like product market fit, I've seen people get a product right and that is wanted and needed. But to get product market fit, especially as a regenerative enterprise, it's more than just having something that someone needs or wants. It's about having something that connects deeply with them, that they feel empowers them to then build a more regenerative lifestyle around them. Yeah, right?
It's creating the transformation that they are so deeply desiring mm-hmm. in their life. Mm-hmm,
mm-hmm. And that takes conversation, and those conversations can first take place on a more superficial level, because that's really you don't go and meet someone for the first time and say,
Tell me all your woes. Tell me all your challenges in this life.
Yeah. Or for example, like you see this a lot in the sales world, or when you're selling your products, right? Someone's selling you a product and they ask to get married almost immediately, right? Like, will you marry me? And the equivalent of that for a client relationship is, will you buy my product or service, right? Will you have that type of
be my client,
intimate relationship where you use my product and service and I help you to build towards the transformation? No, the conversations begin gradually. It may be that you reach out to someone through a survey to get a better understanding of them, and they just fill out something. And that's kind of really a one-sided conversation. So you got to make sure that you open the conversation up. And it's about an opening of conversation, not a closing of that conversation where I'm just trying to sell you something, right? And that you never really get to know someone if all you're doing is trying to sell them, right? We had this conversation the other day of like opening versus closing, right? And the way that we talk and build communication, have conversations and communications with our clients. There is a lot of times in the marketing world, we feel like we need to be closing people, getting people towards a sale, towards purchasing our product or service. And we totally neglect the other part of that has to have balance, is you have to have enough opening and understanding of your client and who they are and empathy around that before you can start closing or building towards helping them to find a solution, which is kind of this more narrowing towards something rather than expanding away and towards a greater understanding of the whole picture, right? If that's making sense in your mind, Emily, maybe you can describe it in your words of what that means to you. So I'm not just the one that's bringing this out, and so someone can hear it in someone else's words.
Well, I think, yeah. So imagine kind of like a diamond pattern where you're starting at one of the points, and you want to open it up with, you want to open up the person that you're talking to with really like open-ended questions, right? As opposed to closed-ended questions, which closes the conversation. And so really trying to use open-ended questions to really understand them and maintaining a very high level of curiosity, because sometimes people will kind of give the superficial answer, but there's a lot more. There's a lot more, many more layers below that superficial answer. So being curious and really trying to open them up in a very comfortable and safe, non-manipulative way, of course, but really from an effort to further understand them and what their challenge is and the transformation that they're really looking for, right? And I'm saying curious in terms of not even just superficially, what's your need and what are you looking for? What's your problem? But really like, how are you feeling about that? How does that affect your life? How does that affect your family? You know, what are the ramifications of this challenge that you're having? And really trying to connect with them on a deep level. Once you get to that point, that's kind of like the widest point in the diamond. Once you feel like you have a really solid understanding, then you can start to kind of pull it back in. If your goal at that time, which not every conversation's goal will be to sell something. And we have to be careful not to put kind of the cart before the horse, of course, and do things kind of sensitively and organically and empathetically. But if the point of that conversation is to try to close towards a sale or towards some type of opt-in, then we take what we know from the widening of the conversation, from this higher level of empathy that we have, and we start asking if certain things would be solutions and more closed-ended questions, right? That kind of narrow down more and more until you have the final question of like, is this something that would be a solution for you, right? Again, we want to be, especially in the regenerative realm, we don't want to be manipulative. We don't want to be pushy. We don't want to be overly pitchy, but genuinely asking if what we have would be a solution for them, because we're really trying to find a solution for them. And if it's not, ask about maybe why it's not. Because if all those questions, if they go unanswered, that's just big blank spots in your knowledge of where they're at and what they're struggling with. And if Josh always talks about, well, did you ask these questions? Did you ask these questions? And to be totally honest and transparent, I often forget to ask more questions. It's something that I'm constantly working on, but always trying to kind of just check in with yourself during these conversations. What am I missing? What other question could I ask? What other thing could I be just 10% more clear on, right? So that we really feel like we get the whole picture. It's also amazingly helpful to record these conversations, whether that's on Zoom or whatever technology or whatever you want to use, because we're going to forget a lot of it when we finish, right? It helps to like write things down right after, but our brain will naturally forget things and fill things in. But those conversations can be so helpful and so insightful in terms of really understanding who our ideal client is, where they're at in their challenge, if there's someone that we're wanting to serve, and why our solution may or may not be a good fit for them.
Yeah, and so it's this opening and then being able to come back towards and direct them towards a possible solution. We may not have that solution after we really truly discover who they are, right? And that means that they're not a good fit, right?
Right. And that's okay.
And that's okay. That they're not an ideal client.
If you need the permission, we're giving you the permission. You don't have to serve everyone. If you try to do it, you will be serving no one. It's okay to say, this person is not a good fit.
So that there is a great opportunity for you to, and a great skill set and a how-to of really moving towards a better understanding of your ideal client. There's this really... We like to do it as a looking at our ideal client as like an onion. It has layers, right? And we can't hit those deeper inner parts in it until we really peel back the layers, right? And truly get to understand. And once we do, there's the emotional side of bringing up these things that really helps empower our client, our ideal client. Once we do really have that ideal client, to be able to really impact and help them move towards a good solution for themselves. And that's about getting to those deeper core inner understandings of them, are the emotional and belief structures that are there, right? And we kind of peel back the layers towards a deeper understanding and think about the relationships that you have. When you have greater influence with someone, it's when you actually can speak to them on a very deep level, right? So having these conversations that can go deeper and deeper and really truly get to the understanding, that is huge in us being able to build towards that type of clarity of who we're serving and how we can benefit or influence them towards creating change in their lives, right, through the products and services that we create. So with that in mind, let's talk more about how we can observe and interact, and another skill and kind of how-to that you can use in your business to do so. And that is observing everything that this person is saying, or these people that are saying in our conversations, in a very in-depth way, so that we can start to read in between the lines of what they are not saying, essentially, right? The kind of negative space that's out there. When someone talks to you, they're often not going to give you all the details of what their false belief structures are and their true belief is and deep desires of why they're doing this. And so we sometimes got to read in between the lines. How do we do that?
Let's take a moment for a promotional break to tell you about a course Seeds of Tao has just released in its beta form. The entrepreneurs that listen to this podcast want to see change. We want to be the change, and we want to bring that change. We want to change the culture from an extractive and degenerative one into a permanent regenerative one, a culture that cares for its people, planet, and future. This is the reason why so many entrepreneurs we talk to at Seeds of Tao start regenerative enterprises. They don't do it for the money. They do it because they want to see change. The challenge is that it's hard to build a business, especially a regenerative one, that is the catalyst for change. I often interview and speak with individuals that have managed to build a business and livelihood from their passion. And they often tell me that they wish they could do more, or they feel like their efforts aren't enough. They want to scale their efforts and the efforts of others, but they don't know how. Don't we all feel this way sometimes? We see our neighbors, industry, peers, suppliers, producers falling further into degenerative practices, and we think, I've made the change. Why can't they? How can I get them to change? We know it's hard to change, and for some, it's harder than others. We also know that we can't change others, only ourselves. We can, however, pave the way for change and make it easier for the next person to be that change. That path always starts with a story. Seeds of Tao has launched its first online course for regenerative entrepreneurs, and its objective is to help you pave the way to regenerative change through the power of your brand story. You'll learn to naturally grow and scale your business using brand storytelling and other inherent marketing systems that have stood the test of time. As you do this, you'll learn to do it in a way that influences change, not forcing change. No, we should never do that. It never works. Nor should we manipulate, even though it's an unethical way to make things work. Let's be a positive influence through the story and the message that we put out. The course is called the StorySeed, and it's the first of 6 initial courses we're releasing to help regenerative entrepreneurs build the regenerative economies of the future. The first 500 students to enroll in StorySeed will gain lifetime access to this course and the other 5 courses in our initial catalog. To give you an idea of what some of those courses will be, in addition to StorySeed, which covers marketing and messaging, we're building a funding and finance course and a course that helps you navigate the cultural forces and flows that you face as you create systematic and cultural change in your industry. On top of lifetime access to the Pando Academy course catalog, you'll be able to join us for weekly office hours, utilize step-by-step action workbooks, get discounted prices on other offerings, and other amazing benefits. This is a beta offering, which means you're helping us pioneer an education platform and accelerator for regenerative entrepreneurs. If you're an innovator and early adopter building a regenerative enterprise, come pioneer this with us by following the promotional link in the description or show notes and enrolling in StorySeed. Okay, let's get back to the episode. So reading in between the lines, what does that mean? So we talked about recording things. So you have a conversation you can go back and look at and kind of pull apart a little bit, right? Having had these conversations, when you come back and look at a recorded conversation or a transcribed conversation, you'll have different eyes because you're coming post-conversation. And so then things that we can do to read in between the lines there's a number of different kind of tactics and tools, but really the essence of what you're wanting to do is to identify patterns that you're seeing, especially in terms of if you're looking at multiple conversations like this that you've had. Are we noticing patterns among many of them? Are we noticing that they're maybe in certain places in their life or in their kind of customer journey for you, right? What are the broad stroke patterns that we can see? Are we noticing similar language? That's really helpful also. I know that it's a very, very, very very common challenge for people in regeneration because we kind of speak this other language, it seems like. That's what everyone says. It's this other language. And we feel like we are literally speaking a different language than the people we are trying to serve. So we have to figure out what the language is that they're speaking, right? Because if we're speaking our language to them, that's not going to be helpful at all. And so noticing those types of patterns that, again, not to be manipulative, but genuinely to be able to connect with people better, those types of things are really helpful. That's some of the ways that we can read between the lines. When we start to notice kind of groups of people, where they may be at in their challenge, in their stage of business, whatever, you'll start to notice different patterns. And if we're able to group those people, I mean, we're talking about market segmentation for the appropriate term. If we're able to kind of put people in buckets, you can talk to those people differently and you'll be more effective than if you're just sending one message out, talking to everyone you're trying to bring in. Mm-hmm. So those are some helpful things.
Yeah. And so as you kind of get an understanding of everything that they're saying, right? The kind of broadening that diamond that Emily suggested, we're at the widest point in our understanding of our ideal client. Those patterns start to get clearer in our mind, and we can see the pieces. But there also has to be this knowledge that we build over time and skill of empathy, right? And to do that, you have to really truly understand certain parts of the character or the persona that is in front of you, right? So there are commonalities between the things that you really truly want to focus in on when you're trying to find these patterns. And so the two big ones that you're going to always try to understand as in-depth as you can are their desire, right? It all starts with the desire. For when you're building a product or service, it starts with the desire for someone to solve a challenge. And so that's the first part, is desire. They desire something. And then as they kind of desire something, they will ultimately run into challenges, bumps in the road, obstacles that stand in their way. So the second thing that you really truly need to understand is the challenges that they're going through. And if you're looking through this and finding this information and where we're opening up the conversation and trying to get to understand those things, that's really the focus, right? Is expanding to have greater clarity of what they truly desire and the challenges that exist. And then when you get to the challenges, we really can dive really, really deep into and peel back the layers of what their challenges are doing to them and how it's making them feel, and peel back those layers, right? So we want to not just get the superficial challenge of like what it is specifically that's burning them, like the physical pain that's being caused, right? Or thing that's blatantly in front of them, but the emotions cause from that challenge, right? And then even peeling that back further, like what is the belief structures that they have that are holding them back, right? So we're diving deeper and deeper into their understanding. And that's a part of recognizing those patterns and reading in between the lines, is really diving further and further. Can you label the emotion that they're feeling as they're working through their challenge? Can you label the false belief structure that they're having that's stopping them from getting further into engaging with you for a solution, engaging in a plan that you have for them, right? To move towards a transition or transformation towards regeneration, right? Or whatever your product or service is doing for them.
So another thing, when you're looking back at this information, these conversations, there's a very special type of person that you're going to want to look for. It's our favorite people. Mm-hmm. Call them the mavens. These are the mavens. What is a maven? A maven is someone who will talk your ear off about the challenge that they're having and possibly the type of solution you're wanting to offer. The people who are really passionate about the challenge you're trying to solve, right? These people could go on for days and they love what you're doing and they want to connect you with other people. They're like just this instant kind of brand evangelist, right? Mm-hmm. They're like your instant best friend when you're talking with two people. But they're also kind of in that realm of these would also be our ideal clients, right? It's not just like a random person who likes to talk a ton, mm-hmm. right? It's different.
Yeah, these mavens, and I'm agreeing with you in that there's a lot that this maven can bring up, but we got to understand that a maven truly understands who you're trying to serve, because they deeply understand themselves, and can give you that information that can go deeper and dive a little deeper and say a little bit more. Whereas other people, most people that are non-mavens are going to be like 80% or 90 or 95% of your people that are purchasing your product or service. But this like 5%, these are kind of game changers, and they will help you to understand what people are saying inside their mind out loud, essentially, is what we're saying. They're going to maybe even say, if you ask them what their challenges are, they're going to say what that external challenges, that the things that are just getting to them. It's about money, it's about this, about that, and then they'll just say, like how it's causing them to feel like, I feel like I can't do this. I feel like I'm not having this, and I feel like others are having this challenge too. Like, and they will really dive into how they're feeling and the challenges that exist with that. They will tell you things that are coming up in their life, false belief structures that they have, and you're not asking them for this information. You're really truly just asking them open-ended questions, trying to get to know them, and they bring this type of information to the forefront. So when you're observing and interacting and truly trying to find who your ideal client is, you need to have a understanding of them through these mavens, because they're the ones that are saying what others are saying in their head out loud, right? And we need that feedback. We need that information, which gets us into this second principle that we want to hit on for finding your ideal client, which is applying self-regulation and accepting feedback, that permaculture principle, and how we can use that. So we get the feedback from the mavens. How we use that in our messaging is a really strong point.
So one of the big things is once we kind of get all our resources together, like Josh was saying, getting all the words, we're seeing the patterns and everything. That's when we could really start to own our message and to really step into our message based on what we've been seeing and based on our observation and interaction, if I can say that correctly, which then can help build out our sales process, our marketing systems, all that whole system. If we're building it on the information that we've collected from our ideal client, that's a much stronger foundation than just building it out of assumptions or of whatever data we found, right? Mm-hmm. So that it creates that really strong foundation for any of our marketing, sales, and everything, so that we can be more effective and really amplify our message.
I want to add to that there as well. There's the pieces that we create in our marketing. Getting messaging from our mavens is a strong piece of how we can talk to our clients that are not able to say and go as deep as we can. So we can build messaging in our marketing that comes from our maven, and that is a way for us to own who and what we're doing, and kind of self-regulate ourselves, right? We can't. The big piece that we often neglect in our business are the things that we don't really truly understand, and we will often let others regulate that in our business. We'll pass it over to someone else to do. We'll give the marketing over to someone else. And that reduces our power to make the change and understand and be intuitive and create the change that we truly want to. So a part of that is not giving our giving our message up to someone else, saying, you go do the market research, you go do this. We truly got to understand that and take ownership of it. We can have someone else do the work of like having those conversations. But if we're not the ones actually listening to those and truly trying to understand them, it can be really truly detrimental to our business and cause it to flounder, because we aren't building that understanding ourselves, and we aren't regulating our business ourselves. And so we want to apply that self-regulation by understanding our message, understanding our sales process, being a part of that, and building the marketing systems ourselves. And then we can hire people and have agencies or other people that are working on that. But we truly have to take ownership of that and regulate that. So that's a first really strong piece that you want to build.
Right.
Towards.
Once you have that solid foundation, that solid messaging foundation, that understanding of your client, then you can bring in other people to execute that. But you have the foundation, you have the guides, so that you're not diluting your message, bringing people in. It's so important.
And it allows you to be able to accept feedback from your clients in a way that you can then use in your business, right? You can't, if you give your marketing over to someone else, you have no clue what is happening on the back end. Like, you don't know what the interactions, and they typically don't have a good understanding. The people that you're giving that up to, say you're giving it to a marketing agency, most marketing agencies, or
even like a lot of people will just hire a social media marketer just by itself.
That doesn't understand. You need to make sure that they understand and teach them before they come in. And so that means you have to have a good understanding and a good pulse or understanding and a good understanding of the pulse of your business, right? And a lot of that comes in understanding the marketing systems, the sales process, how you're building messaging, right? And that will allow you to get the feedback on all the different pieces and different stages of your business if you have a good pulse of what a good hand on, what's the saying that I'm trying to pull here, the good hand on the pulse or hand on the wheel. That's one of them, I guess you could say. A good hand on the wheel of truly what your marketing is, and then being able to allow for the right type of feedback to come back into your business so you can take action on it.
Yeah, you've seen so many businesses, or I should say founders, right, will think, oh, well, I'll just hire a marketing person, whatever, because I don't want to touch it, because that's not my forte.
Yeah.
And it's different. It's two different situations if you're saying, I want nothing to do with it because it's not my strong point, as opposed to, I'm going to help kind of lay these foundational layers so that the message is right on. And then I'm going to give it to someone to execute, right? Because if we automatically disconnect the message, the brand from the founders, the original visionaries, or the current team of visionaries, then we're instantly diluting what's happening, or making it so much weaker. And then the person who's executing is just basically doing whatever they want and A/B testing however they can, right? It's not as effective. It's not as authentic. And let's be honest, people in the regeneration realm, one thing they do not lack is passion, right? And we want that to come across in our businesses and what we're doing. Passion for this positive change, passion for the regenerative solutions we're bringing to market. So we need to make sure that we're not, like you said, giving that power up. We do need to have one hand on the wheel, maybe was what you were going for. Having one hand on the wheel, even if we're not the one writing the marketing campaigns, that's fine. But we have to do that foundational work, or we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yeah, and you will get, and I guess what I'm trying to go for is you can also just have a pulse, have the pulse of once you've kind of built up your marketing systems, you can have a strong understanding by keeping a pulse on what's going on in your marketing. That is going to be really critical for you to move towards having these kind of feedback loops that allow you to evolve your message, your business over time, serve your client in the right way, right? And create the transformations that you want for these clients. Because really, it comes back to, are you making an impact, right? Are you creating an impact? And you can't understand if you're creating an impact if you don't truly have the right conversations with people and understand them, right? At any point of your business. So when a lot of times in our business, we talk about getting feedback at different stages of the journey. And that can be a really, like my ideal client in the beginning of their journey really doesn't understand that they have a problem in their business, right? They understand that there's something going on, but they don't understand what that problem is. And so how do you gain understanding of where they're at in their headspace at that moment versus the person that our ideal client, when they've made a purchase and they're working with us, what are the things that are going through their head as they're making that transformation? How do they feel, right? And those two pieces at different stages and understanding the feedback from those sides, you have to really get that from them at that time. So what we do in our business is we often ask for that feedback or get that feedback, record conversations when someone's going through, an ideal client's going through that a certain stage at the beginning or at the end. And we apply that to our marketing message so that we can tell a full story, so that we can help them through their entire journey. Because if we can help someone to understand what it looks like on the back end of accomplishing something, because we've talked to people and we understand we can build messaging that resonates with them, we can help them move towards that. And vice versa, when someone is struggling in the early stages of their journey, we understand what to say at the right time in the right places.
And then it's also important, we're talking about all this feedback. I mean, I'm going to say this and then I'm going to explain it. Apply that feedback as it comes in. Does that mean that you're changing your messaging every week because you got it there? You talked to someone else and they brought up a different problem? No, please don't do this. However, it's important every so often, 6 months to a year, you decide for your business to look at it again, to see the feedback that's coming in, seeing trends that you're noticing, identify the pattern. I'm saying trends, not as in like the trendy trends that are happening on social media or whatever, not that, but I'm talking about behavioral patterns you're seeing or patterns from the conversations that you're having with your clients or potential clients, and then making small adjustments while still staying true to your original message. But this is an organically grown business as a regenerative business, right? Things are going to grow. We may pivot. We may add another customer segment as our solutions can grow and get more effective. Like things can change, but we do need to stay true to that foundational brand message, that foundational brand identity, which we created through all that feedback that we originally acquired.
Going from the patterns to details, right?
Yeah, patterns to details.
Those principles, when we're getting that feedback and as it's coming in, you're going to often, it's not just a one-time thing. That's what we're trying to say here as well. Right?
Yeah, it's not one and done.
It's not one and done. I do the market research. I get to know my clients. And then now that I know my clients,
I never
have to do it again, right? I know my clients, right? And sometimes we kind of get into that mode in our business, like, oh, I know my clients. I don't need to, I don't need to have these conversations anymore. I don't need to do, I don't need to get that feedback anymore. And as soon as we cut ourselves off from that feedback and that understanding, that information, that opening of who they are, then we cut ourselves off from our client. And that is when we lose ourselves, we lose touch of the impact that we want to create. And we start to go into decline because we're not, you can always be expanding, always be learning more about how to better serve and better understand your ideal client.
Just do it within reason. What makes sense for the effort, the time, the resources that you have, of course. Right. You don't need to drop absolutely everything in your business to do this market research and have these conversations, because that's not sustainable growth either. Right. Make it a priority as it seems appropriate. You know your business, work with what you've seen work and what you feel comfortable with doing. Okay. So we've talked so much about identifying the ideal client.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's imagine we've gone through all the steps and we have our foundation. We know who they are. We know what they eat for breakfast. I'm just kidding. You don't really have to know what they eat for breakfast, but you get the idea. We have a really deep understanding of our people. We've identified our mavens. We know how we're going to incorporate this into our marketing. Now what? What's the next step, Josh?
Well, it's to always keep on going, like you
Right.
said, right? That's kind of the always keep on understanding and identifying who that client is at greater and greater detail. But it's often, now that we have this understanding, we got to put it into the marketing systems. We have to put it into what we're doing to bring in the right clients, right? And that often has to do with storytelling, being able to tell the right story and put it in, because that's the way conversation and communication usually goes, right? The best way, the most effective way to bring a message and get a message out there is to be able to tell a story, because we can relate to story. It's one of the deepest ways of human connection is through storytelling. And so we start to tell a story. In order to do that, there is a moment where we got to understand how we're framing the story. You can't tell everything. You can't tell the whole story, because you're going to lose them, right? It's going to get too confusing for them. It's too grand of an epic, right? You're not going to tell an epic story. You're going to tell a very concise hero's journey of and clear story of helping them move towards a transformation that they desire. And that is a different story that requires framing. And it's something that we're actually going to be talking about here next week, right?
If you're listening to this when it comes out next week, May 15th, I believe, 2023. We're having Jenny Patton, who is a framing ninja.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if she would have me described her that way. She's awesome. And if you haven't listened to her interview on the podcast, that's already out and live. She's awesome. And I just love to hear her talk. She just has the most beautiful voice. I'm so excited to have her as a masterclass, the masterclass teacher next week.
Mm-hmm. So
she's talking about framing.
Yeah, she has a masterclass that we're doing next week, and we're going to be talking about this concept of framing the story. You know, you look at any type of art or any type of let's take photography as a specific art, right? And you want to be able to tell a story with that. You have to frame frame it in a concise way so that people don't get distracted by something that you're not trying to tell in that story. Right?
And also that in photography, you draw the eye to the appropriate place.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for example, and Jenny will talk about this more next week in the masterclass, if you were to take a photograph of a crowd
Mm-hmm.
as they're leaving a town, if you were to take a photograph of the crowd, that would affect you differently than if you were to take that in that same crowd, there's a mom carrying her 3 little kids by herself. If you took a picture of just that family, that would tell a completely different story than just taking a picture of the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be a completely different story than if you just took the picture of one of those kids' dirty little feet walking out of whatever had happened in the past, right? Imagine some disaster or something, right? The story is differently depending on how you frame it.
Mm-hmm.
It touches you emotionally differently, and it makes it, your brain starts telling the story when it sees that image. And so it's super duper powerful, super amazing for marketing, again, not in manipulation, but as a way to be more effective with our storytelling.
Right. And if you're using the information that we've gathered from our observing and interacting with the ideal clients that we want, we can frame our story in the right way. So that's one of the things that we do once we get this information about our ideal client. We know who we're trying to serve, and we know how we're trying to serve them. Now we need to put this into a message that attracts them. And a big part of that is framing the story and then putting that story together. We got to paint the picture now, right? So it's kind of working on the art piece backwards, right? We frame it first, so we know what we're saying because it's already something that's existing. And now we want to kind of paint the picture for them. And to do that, we got to understand the pieces of the story, pieces of the narrative that tell that help the hero, our ideal client, move through towards the transformation that they desire, right? What are the pieces of that story? We're going to get into a lot of that information at a different time.
Future podcast, stay tuned.
Future podcast, stay tuned. You can also, if you're liking what you're listening to here and want to start getting some actionable steps towards finding your ideal client, finding out who you are as a brand, and then being able to create narrative and story that connects with your ideal client, brings them into your products and services, and then you can serve them through that product and service and truly know what to serve them. Well, all of these things are wrapped up in a more concise product and service that we have to serve you, and that is our StorySeed course. And we also do consulting and those types of things that can help you if you're looking. We only take on a few consulting clients at a time, so you might need to get put on a wait list depending on our current bandwidth.
Yeah, those are upcoming on the website, but the StorySeed marketing and messaging course is in beta mode right now, so it's like amazing time to get in because it's super cheap, but it's so effective. And we do weekly office hours every single week for an hour, helping you work through if you get any hangups. This course is for people who don't come from a background of marketing and messaging. They came to entrepreneurship in regeneration from a sideline passion that they wanted to make a livelihood out of, right? So it's okay if you have no marketing background, or if you have some marketing background, that's fine too. But we really break it down into easy, actionable steps. And then we're there along the way to really make sure that you're able to have success with this so that you can be positively amplifying your impact and the message of your amazing work that you're doing.
Yeah. And this is not just for the person that's starting off in their marketing journey.
It doesn't have to be, no.
No, we take you through building a marketing team, if that's where you're at, and trying to apply, have a good understanding of how to grow and scale through your marketing by building a marketing team that really, truly is moving your message forward, creating the type of content that brings people the right ideal client in, right? So I would say there is a point for this course that it doesn't necessarily work for you, and that's if you're a really large company that has a large, at least a marketing team of 7 or more, right? We're trying to get you to that point where you have a strong marketing team that you can kind of let this message that you've built up and understand take light and move forward and take energy into the world, right?
Yeah, so take a look at that. And then again, if you're listening live, next week is Jenny's masterclass. If you're listening to this after May 15th, 2023, we will have the recordings in the resource commons. They're free, totally available to anyone. You can go to our site, seedsofdao.com. If you don't already have an account, you can go join the community. And that's where all the past think tank recordings and masterclass recordings and all of that stuff, the Regen Ben map, the Regenerative Business Economies Network, all of that's in the resource commons with the community. So
yeah, take advantage of those resources and join us for another podcast. We've been so grateful at the type of clients that we've been able to work with within the regenerative realm.
We love them.
And we love you. We love our listeners. So please, if you enjoyed this podcast, please take a moment to write us a comment or reach out.
Write us a review. We would love that. We would love that.
All right, everybody. Thank you again for all the wonderful work that you are doing. Keep on growing your business. Keep on growing the garden as well. And we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. It really is a blessing and a pleasure to bring each episode to you. So what'd you think? If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review or follow us on the podcast platform of your choice. Each review really does help us to further the reach of this podcast and move our mission forward to build regenerative economies in every bioregion. If you have a suggestion or feedback for us, please let us know in the open and free Regenerative Business Economies Network, known as Regen Ben, which is linked in the description and in the show notes of this episode. Regen Ben also has an awesome community request form that allows you to suggest guests, register to be a guest on the podcast, and share your own regenerative entrepreneur startup story, or any other suggestion you may have for the community. Without your feedback and requests, this podcast and community wouldn't be what it is, so please let us know. Now, this may be bye for now, but remember, it doesn't end here. It has only just begun. The regenerative economies of the future start now with you.